Hello, you are here on CMajor before the show. It's Saturday. It's late Saturday afternoon, a little bit after 4 o'clock. Not quite 4:30, a few minutes before 4:30. And it's the Saturday before Easter Sunday. We made it. Give yourselves an applause. Yes, it feels good to be back with you again on this Saturday. It's been quite a week, I have to say. It's been something. So what we're attempting to talk about today, we're talking about chord movement, distancing piano sounds. Now, distance is a word that's in our vocabulary nowadays because we're talking about social distance. And that's not the distance I'm talking about. You could think of it that way. But we're actually thinking about how to put some distance between the sounds that you play on the piano. So this is really an episode for somebody that probably plays already just a little bit. And you know a little something about putting sounds together. Perhaps one of the weirdest things I've ever wondered about is how to play by ear and by chords. What do those musicians do? If you are an auditory musician, and that's all you know how to do. You don't know how to read music. You don't really think about playing scales and arpeggios. You really are just about capturing those close chords, those lush chords, those chords that really get the reaction that you want from the listener. It seems like it took me years to learn how to play and think like an auditory musician. I mean, I just get a different feeling when I play piano. I think it's because I do use a lot of scales and arpeggios in my playing. Anyway, we're going to touch on that a little bit today. The missing link for me, I think, has been to see how words line up with the changes and to see how different musicians that play by ear and by chords, how they choose different changes. You're going to see that today because I've had the advantage of seeing professors at work, ones that think it's all about one thing and other professors who think it's all about another thing, but somehow they meet in the middle. Plus last week we had that question. It came about that we brought up the subject of jazz education and was there such a thing? So I think I'm going to do a live poll with you today during today's episode. So you're going to hear me typing on my computer. I'm going to post the poll. Feel free to participate in that. That's what it's for. And we'd love to see your thoughts online and your reactions. So we have lots more to say. But before I forget, let me just say a little bit more about what we're doing here on the podcast in general. So this is the CMajor Before the Show podcast. If it's your first time here, welcome. You're welcome. And we're glad that you're here. You can find us on Twitter. And I don't have a new book out yet. I'm thinking about writing a book. And one of my friends cautioned me about that. She said, don't think about book, Carol. Think about method. So let me tell you this. It won't be a book about piano lessons. Like it wouldn't be a basic piano lessons book, but it would be a book about the method that I use for teaching the lessons, which I would have to say has gone well with my students. I don't think I use one set method. I use a combination of methods. But anyway, it comes around to just being my signature style, my way of teaching. So I think if anything, I would call it maybe all in one, some sort of reflection on how I've been able to teach piano lessons and get my students to respond. So anyway, look for my new book. It's going to be coming out. And I'll probably do some reflection too about how I wish I had taught in a certain way. You know, I'm just trying to cover all the bases. The more and more I talk with my colleagues and teachers who are doing this, other teaching artists that are out there doing this in the classroom and one-to-one, you just get you get so many really good ideas coming to the table. So I really value their opinions, and they aren't all just music teachers either. It could be visual artists. I'm even crossing paths with mathematicians who are also really great artists in their own right. And so it's just all very exciting. It's a very exciting time. Anyway, so when the book comes out, I will let you know. You will be the first to know. Now, if you are interested in what we do here on CMajor Before the Show, you can write to us. I would say try to send us a message first on Facebook or go to our Twitter page. You can find us over there, and then just drop us a line. I was going to set up an email, but I think I'm going to hold off on that. If you want an email, just tell me, and I will point you to an email that you can send me a message to. I just don't want to, I get so many emails. I find myself unsubscribing a lot because I just want to get rid of all the garbage, and there's so much spam that comes to me. It's so annoying. I don't know if it's algorithms or what, but there's some spam out there, let me tell you, and it's very annoying. But that's the times we live in, isn't it? So if you want to help support CMajor and CMajor Before the Show, we do have a donate button that's available now. Now, I hadn't thought of using this before, but it came to my attention. The generosity of SoundCloud has made it possible for us to post a button. Now, my SoundCloud has not been used as much as it probably could be used, and it's not at the pro level. So you'll see this big long number, user, and then it has a string of numbers. But if you click that button, you will be connected to us, and you can send us your support, whatever you would like it to be, if you want to. And again, if you have problems locating that, just let us know. We'll direct you to that. I also, as you know, have another podcast called the CMajor Radio Show. So that's where I go on the board with you. That's where we get on the whiteboard and we write down some of these chords that we are talking about here on the CMajor Before the Show podcast. So you can find our shows all on one platform at this time, at Spreaker. So go to Spreaker.com if you're thinking about starting a podcast. Spreaker is a really great place to start. There are lots of articles out there about how to get started. And we mentioned some of the ideas for starting a podcast last week, I believe. And I told you about another platform that I was playing around with, so to speak. And so I think that's also a great place for students and teachers to go. But if you are thinking about more on the professional side of things, and you already have your ideas and you have a budget and you're really looking to build, and you're thinking about sponsorship already for yourself, I would say check out the Spreaker platform. Spreaker is spelled like speaker, except it has an extra R in it. Spreaker. 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 Now, if you want to, check out our CMajorPorter.com website for CMajor's classroom. So everything is online. We really appreciate you listening, and we want you to keep safe in this climate that's out there, and we really hope that you enjoy listening to today's episode. Back in a moment. So we're back. We're talking about chord movement, distancing piano sounds. And I was saying one of the weirdest things I've ever thought that came to my mind was how to play by ear and by chords. I think when you're first starting to pick up sounds by ear, that's very different than what you end up doing when you learn what playing by ear really is. When you start playing by ear as a kid, I think you start to pick out melodies on the piano. But it took me a while to learn how to actually space out my sounds and how to play by chords, how to just play. Going from a 1 to a 4 and to a 5, and how to space out those sounds. So we're going to be talking about those today, so hang in for that. So if you understand anything at all about harmonic rhythm, then you probably already know that the melody is going to be faster than the harmony. You probably figured out that much. But sometimes it takes people some time to figure that out. When you play by ear, do you chord along with the melody too? So just keep that in the back of your mind today. What are you supposed to hear in terms of movement when you play? And thank goodness for some brand new pop culture terms these days. We can talk about movement in terms of distance. And there's nothing funny about the social distance that we have to keep, the 6 feet apart. There's nothing funny about that. You really have to work hard at doing that. But on the piano, I think it's going to pay to keep some distance too between your sounds. So keep that in mind as well. It's almost like a parallel thought today. One has really nothing to do with the other, but distance is distance. How do you keep your sounds at a distance on the piano? So before we get to the piano, back to the piano, first of all, I want to talk about some of the COVID-19 things that I've been going through personally. And just to stop and think for a moment with you, how are you doing in all of this? Are you starting to feel hopeful that you can get back to normal life? Or are you starting to feel that maybe this thing could flare back up again? If you listen to the media and all the things that are said by our leaders, you don't know really what to think. It's a very confusing time. As I'm out and about in the New York area, when I have to go out to run an errand like food shopping or pick up something at the pharmacy. By the way, paper products are starting to show up little by little back on the shelves, but you still see a lot of restrictions. So it's still a scary time when you see that. Do you wear masks? Do you wear gloves? For the first time, I think it was the end of last week, I found myself actually putting on a mask and putting on gloves, and now it's a required thing. In order to get into the stores, you must have a mask on. You must have a mask on. They have the flyers posted, notes, announcements posted that in order to get served, you have to be wearing a mask. And so now you see barriers up. All of the workers that are in the stores are wearing gloves. You see the tape on the floor with the social distancing. So I don't know where you are listening to this podcast. Maybe in your area, it's not quite as drastic as it is here, but the measures are definitely in place and you can see them. And it's a really, really scary time. Well, otherwise, it's okay. You expect that Easter weekend is going to be a little bit of what they call the Easter snap. And I think we're experiencing that now. I think last year, about this time, I was putting up Easter shout-outs and talking about Easter weekend. And because we are pretty much restricted to go to service, and the first time I ever remember in my lifetime that you can't attend Easter service in person. You're not supposed to. It just feels different. It feels like you just keep life going the way that it's been going for the past 6 weeks since we've been on lockdown. But anyway, that's how CMajor is feeling about things. I would say I'm feeling hopeful, excited, the way I've been keeping my spirits up. Believe it or not, I've been listening to a lot of house music. Now, I have a friend that was in the house music game, have lots of friends actually that have been in the house music game, musician friends. And some friends will tell you they don't really like the game. They don't like the culture, but they have found success with the music itself. But I would have to say, aside from other music that can make you feel upbeat, some of my friends rely on rock music or another genre of music. But to me, music is music. Either you feel it, you connect with it, or you don't. And so I connect with the spirit of house music, and that's what I like. If I have to get through my day, I like that type of movement, that type of beat. I think originally I was a kinesthetic learner, and then I became visual because the idea of learning to read early in life and read well was presented to me, and then I just ran with it. But I really think I'm that type of person that needs to be moving around a lot. So even if I'm not physically moving, my mind is constantly moving. And house music kind of fits that beat to me. So that's how I've been keeping my spirits up. So if you see on my social media that I've been posting Glitterbox and Defected Records, and you're going, wait a minute, what's up with CMajor? Why is she posting that? It's because I really like the music sets. And the sets are long. Like sometimes you can listen for 5 hours if you listen to the right DJ set. And I have a lot of DJ musician friends as well online. And so shout out to all of the DJs. You guys really make it happen. I think after D Nice went online and did what he did, was that on Instagram? I think it was Instagram. After he did what he did, and you had a lot of DJs coming out of the woodworks that tried to do the same thing. But I've met D Nice before. He is a nice person, and he really has worked hard for his career and has been a corporate DJ for a long time. So, kudos to him. And I wish all the DJs that are looking for long-term success, that you will find the success that you're looking for. So good luck out there, guys. There are a lot of DJs out there, but I believe you can find what you're looking for if you just try hard enough. Now, playing by ear versus sight versus movement. In the academic world, we refer to that as auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. And so basic chord movement is what we're talking about today. It's great for learning to play songs. If you've heard of a progression, and it's a common progression for multiple songs, I think the idea is to learn how to move between chords to get the sound that you want. So you can still hear the movement in terms of the harmony, but just all these little nuances are taking place too. Okay? So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to go over to my piano. I happen to have it close by. So you're going to hear me tinkering around with the piano, and then we'll come back to the recorded music. Now, this is not my original lesson. I'm borrowing this from one of the world's greatest professors that I've mentioned on my show. I haven't mentioned his name, I don't think. At least not recently. But it's a borrowed lesson of sorts. And if you care to know anything more about his teaching, just let me know. I'd be happy to share it with you. But basically, the person that helped him to write his book talked about his basic chord movement. So it starts off as saying that very few pianists have a fine sense of movement in chords as this particular professor. So he just has a really deep understanding and a deep appreciation of the essential elements of harmony. I really think that's a gift. I really do. If anything, I think I have a talent mostly for movement. So when my students hear me do, when they hear me do something fast, they think they can play just that fast. I think that's something that's exciting for me. But I think when you have a talent for harmony, you tend to really play in a way that you are listening to every single sound. You're feeling every single feeling in your fingers. And you really understand the sounds to be part of a family in a way. I've heard him use that language when he talks about, where the chords came from and all of that. That was such a new concept for me. But to add, sound that is rich with spice and variety and all of that. So to grasp this professor's ideas, his ideas of harmony, it helps if you can study, if you haven't already, study your major and minor 6th chords and study your diminished 7th chords. Now, that's so interesting because this other professor that I worked with, he has a different layout, and he did write a book as well, but he wrote about it in a way that I think that makes you think more about rhythmically how you would be using the harmony. But anyway, we'll get to him in a moment. So let's just hear a little bit of this, because if you look in theory books, they will use language like close and open, or closed and open. I've seen it both ways, but they mean the same thing. So you're talking about distance, really, between the notes. Some professors, in the case of this professor, would call them short chords and long chords. And then one way to find the long chord is by swapping the top and bottom notes of a short chord. And so it also gets into that language too of like how you are labeling your chords, how are you labeling your intervals, things like that. We can get into that too, talking about the distance between notes. But let's just stick with this. So 6 chords, long and short. So let's say if I wanted to play this. Okay, so that would be called playing it in a short chord position, right? And then you put some distance between your notes, like what we're doing now. When you go into your shopping places, you have to put some distance between you and the next person. And then you can play it this way. Okay, here it's the same chord. It's just there's distance now in the sound. So listen to it as close or closed. And then listen to it as open. Listen to it now as short and long. And then the other thing you might think too is, where have you heard that? Where have you heard that sound? It's so funny because the more you listen, the more you're able to hear certain cadences, certain sounds, certain chords. You hear something. I was listening to, I think, a symphony the other day, and the way it ended, I said, oh, it ended 5, 7, and 1. And so I think our professors were really trying to get us to think that way in the beginning, but it takes time. You really have to practice. Play slowly, listen as fast as you can, and then go back and play it slowly. Okay, now I'm going to go to something else. Also play it in a short position. Everything is close or closed. I'm just going to say short and long. Let's talk in terms of distance right now. And that's long. Here's another one. Short. Long. Here's another one. what I really love about this, and where we can really think about using the whiteboard for the CMajor radio show, is to show you how the roots of these notes move, how you can swap out some of the tops and the bottoms to find your way between short and long. Now, I'm going to play some short chords that are inverted, all in a sequence, okay? And then I'm going to stretch them out so you can hear what they would sound like in a sequence as long chords. And just think about the space in between the chords. When I think about space between chords, I think about the writing of Aaron Copland, for instance. And I was very surprised. I was listening to something else that he wrote using 20th century harmony. And I was really surprised at his writing. It was so different than, all the other symphonic stuff that he wrote. But anyway, short chords. Long chords. Okay, did you hear all of that? Hopefully you did. Okay, so this should be done with all major and minor sixth chords. Sixth is spelled S-I-X-T-H. And then you're supposed to, just try them out and think about them logically. Really point out what sounds unusual. Just play it really slowly and then just listen. So again, the point of today's show really is to talk about, is there such a thing as jazz education? So in a moment when I go back to my computer, I'm going to go onto my poll site and then just type that, and to get your thoughts on that. Unfortunately, we lost Mr. Marsalis, and I would have loved to have had that conversation with him. I was talking with a teacher friend this week, and they were just saying, it would have been really nice to be able to understand his perspective on jazz education and whether or not there was such a thing. Is it really an oxymoron? So exercise, if you want to exercise in long and short chords, just think about this, okay? Now I'm going to be playing a non-stop sequence exercise. What you're really supposed to do is just keep going up. And I think his idea is that you would just be able to play that all over the piano using all types of key signatures. Now I played it kind of choppy. I played as everything sounded really detached. But now I'm going to see if I can connect a little bit more, because in this example that I'm seeing in front of me, you have some tied notes. You have some more overlapping in the sound. Now, I did use the pedal. I think if you finger pedal it, I was at a master class this week. So excited to be in this master class, let me tell you. Oh my goodness. You probably saw me posting all over the internet because it was really exciting to be in a master class where they were really talking about some high level nuances, about dynamics as well as technique and artistry and articulation, and whether or not you should be slurring, using two-note slurs versus detached notes, using the technique of Bach. And it just made me think of finger pedaling. I think that they never used that term, but that's what came to mind. Now, this time I didn't use the pedal, but what I tried to do was hold down the tied notes. So because, of the piano that I'm using, you probably didn't hear everything the way you would have heard it on a grand piano. And so thinking about Bach's time, they didn't really have sustained pedal because there were no pianos during his time. He died in 1750, so it was really before the use of the piano and the invention of the piano became popular to the point that everybody was using the sustained pedal. But just think about what he had to do as an organist to make his sounds connected. You have to use a certain type of technique. So let's go to now a progression. So here is an example of how you might apply this holding technique, thinking about long and short chords coming together. And think about this progression using a 2, a 5, and a 1 situation. Okay, so here we go. So hopefully that made sense to you. I think this professor also tries to get you to think how you would arrive somewhere and how you would leave that place that you just came to. Now, he also talks about diminishes. I've heard him say this on video. Your diminishes. You have to know your diminishes. So in this book, it talks about diminished chords, long and short. So we're also thinking about distance. So notice the use of the G flat diminished 7th chord for F7 to take us back to B flat 6. I think that's so genius to think about how you're going to go someplace and how you're going to arrive, what makes sense. So the movement from a diminished chord back to a 6th chord is the basis of many harmonic progressions. A thorough understanding of this movement underlies this professor's approach to chording. Practice the diminished 7ths as you have practiced the 6ths in long and short chords. So you're going to hear that now. So I'm going to play short first and then long. Okay, let me try that again. That was not a diminished chord. Diminished chords sound like a train, right? Like a horn on a train. And, the sound in the movies where the girl is tied to the train tracks. Anyway, this is a diminished short. Okay, now I'm going to open it up and make it long. It's still a diminished chord, but now you have some distance between, right? Okay, now let's hear it again. But this time, let's hear it this way. Very beautiful, though, the way that you play it and you think about, wow, if you just put some distance, if you can just draw a line to see where everything is moving, and then be thinking. To play piano by ear and by chords means you really have to be thinking all the time. And you have the freedom to make a lot of choices. Okay, now let's listen to this example. Okay, so hopefully you heard what we were trying to get you to hear. And so now we're going to move on. Now let's look at a very simple movement from one 6th chord to another via a diminished. So this movement is hidden in much of the harmony we play. First of all, move from a G6 to a C6. Okay, I love this because you hear a lot of gospel musicians doing this all the time. Like they're always competing on the Hammond, how they're going to get someplace, how they're going to arrive someplace. Sometimes I think they want to play all of the movements they can possibly play in between chords, just to kind of show off they have that knowledge or they practiced. But anyway, here we go. G6 to a C6. Or okay, did you hear it? Now let's try these diminished passing chords. And so the professor has given us the long chord, so you can immediately hear what a lovely, open, and logical sound these moves can have. Now, when you play classical music, let me just say, if you haven't really studied your theory and you're just playing notes because you can read them and not hearing the sound, then you may have a different experience here. But let's see if you can open your mind just a little bit. So we're trying to immediately hear what a lovely, open, logical sound these moves can have. So instead of moving now from a G6 straight to a C6, I'm going to put a diminished chord in between. So you're going to hear me play a G6 to a B flat diminished to a C6. In classical, we would say fully diminished. So here we go. Now I'm going to play a G6 to an A flat fully diminished chord to a C6. So hopefully you found that sound beautiful and it was logical to move in that way. If you didn't put a diminished chord between your G6 and your C6 chord, what would you have put there? So he's just saying there are many harmonic situations that are based on these simple moves. You have to be thinking, be logical. Here's one where he's taking a C major ninth to a C6 chord. So he wants you to notice that the upper notes of a C major 9 are in fact the notes of a G6 chord, E, G, B, D. And that's true. So if you just play that on the piano as a block like that, or if I put the C in the bass, okay, and then I can move from my B to my A, and then from my D to my C. It's like a real nice resolution. I can't think of a classical piece that would end like that, but I can think of a classical piece that would end like that dynamically, where you really want like a decrescendo. So you want this sound to be bigger and this one, that one to be smaller. But he's talking about the harmony here. So the notes B and D can be lowered to one tone to A and C, thus arriving at C6, and this is what we see. Now, here's the genius of, to me, jazz. And to me, this is jazz education, because now you're thinking, okay, how can I use something to connect them? And would a diminished chord really, really work well here? And would you see this also maybe like in the music of Chopin, for instance? So I've heard a lot of gospel and jazz pianists say, hey, you know, what you just played there just sounded like what I use in my gospel music. What is that? You know, and it may be something from Chopin. I think this professor also has been able to create a composition that sounds very close to Chopin's music and have someone make that comment. So now we're going to use a B flat diminished 7 to connect the chords that we just played. Okay, so now listen up. And then my thought would be to ask you, do you even like that sound? Would you resolve it in that way? Would you go? And where would that fit? And would that work in gospel? Or would you need to do something else to resolve from one chord to the next? So things to think about. 2-5-1 progressions are also made up of this type of movement. So to see this, you regard like a D minor 7 to a G7 with a flat 9 to a C6. And then you think of it as an F6 to a B diminished 7 to a C6. So no matter how you see it or hear it, you have certain ways to describe it, and we still see it as 2, 5, 1. Okay, so just listen to this. Then we have something called a minor 2, 5, 1 progression, which can also be understood in this way. You can either describe it as a D minor 7 with a flat 5, or a G7 with a flat 9, or a C minor 6. And then say it another way, F minor 6 to a B diminished 7 to a C minor 6. Either way, the notes are the same. And those are nice sounds. Would you recognize those sounds if you heard them in a recording, for instance? Now, let's get to the part where this really struck my attention, because if you've ever played the music of Gershwin, then you had to have heard that song, I Got Rhythm. Okay, but how would you harmonize that? So as a person that reads music, I would be very excited about playing that melody, right? Or playing an arrangement where the melody and the chords are combined. But if you play by ear, you're going to be really excited to play just the harmony. And how are you going to arrive there? So I have a couple of examples of I Got Rhythm, and I think we're going to stop there. Because then we start getting into the discussion of diminished scales and so forth. So we're not going to go there today. And in fact, I already have an idea of what we'll talk about next week in our class. So I hope you'll be around for that. Today's episode really is just dedicated to anyone who's ever taught musicians that ended up playing jazz. And would you say that you gave them a jazz education, or that you just simply gave them a music education? And you taught them harmony and ways of thinking that could be used in jazz music. How would you say that? Okay, but anyway, here we go with I Got Rhythm. These are just the chords, the harmonic progression of I Got Rhythm. So in this example, you're going to hear open chords that can be used in comping. So if you don't know what comping is, we'll talk about comping. And I've talked about comping in a previous episode, but we'll talk about comping at another time. But in short, comping is just playing accompaniment behind soloists on the first 8 measures of a number of tunes that are based on the harmonic progression of I Got Rhythm. So that's the fun thing, is that if you know what that progression is, then you can hear it right at once when you recognize it. So if I go from a B flat to a G, okay, and then I go to a C, and then I go to an F, okay, so thinking about distance, B flat to G is a sixth, right, in terms of an interval, okay, B flat to C is a second, and then B flat to F is a 5. So you could call that a 1, 6, 2, 5 progression, which a lot of people recognize and go, oh man, that's just a 1, 6, 2, 5 progression they made that song on. You could probably find a lot of different songs that would borrow the same progression, but the way that they voice the notes, the way they're keeping the distance between the sounds may be different, because it also depends on what the melody calls for. How is the melody affecting your movement? So I think that's the genius again of musicians that play by ear and by chords. Okay, so just listen to this. I'm reading. I'm not playing this by ear. So, of course, I played that a little slow because I wanted you to hear just the progression and not think how fast, if I really wanted to play those chords up the tempo. Okay, now we're going to put away this professor's notes for a moment. And now I'm going to take you to another professor in a totally different key. And he does talk about comping. That's the first thing you see on this page. So I actually knew this professor. I had a chance to experience his teaching. Not long enough, though. But he wrote a book, and he talks about the I got rhythm changes. But he does it a different way. He borrows from the C major chord, and he's trying to teach you a lesson about the minor 7th chord. So just imagine. So in his map, he's showing you a diagram of a C major 7 chord in root position, an A minor 7 chord, a D minor 7 chord, and then a G7 chord. So I can already see the teaching of this professor versus the other professor. They're going to clash because the other professor, I think, is really sensitive to the voicing, what makes sense logically, not just thinking about the chords itself. Because this professor is telling you, okay, you're going to mix a major 7 with a minor 7 with 7 chords in a standard progression, and use the classic I got rhythm. And that's the famous Gershwin song, and you're going to build chords on the 1st, the 6th, and the 2nd, and the 5th steps of the scale. And that's how he's explaining it to you. So if you were to comp this progression, you would just play it like so. Okay, so then the question becomes, what do you think about those chords? Did you appreciate those? To me, that sounded really thick textured. Could you get away with playing in a band, or would they really expect you to put distance between your notes and not just playing them in a cluster like that? So I've experienced both. When I played with a gospel band, nobody in the band read music. As long as I got the changes and I sounded close, they were happy. But I just could imagine playing with really jazz cats and really serious jazz cats that they would really have a problem with how I just played that just now. So again, how would you comp the 1-6-2-5 progression if you played with a band? And also, how would you move these chords? What kind of basic chord movement would you use? Would you invert these chords? Would you think about the nuances in the sound? Would you put some distance between your sound? How would you create a great sound? So hopefully that gave you some food for thought. If you like what I just talked about, give me an applause. Thank you so much. I was really passionate about today's subject because I've been on this long journey of just trying to understand the difference between classical musicians and the way they think about music, and jazz musicians and the way they think about music. And so our overarching question today, too, really stemmed from our conversation last week. Is there such thing as jazz education, or does it all work together? So we're going to go right now and post that as a poll. So if you know anything about our polling, we don't post the polls by just using the poll that's already on our social media. We try to use a separate poll service for that. So you're going to hear me typing on the computer. By the way, you are listening to CMajor Before the Show. I'm your host, CMajor Porter. Thank you again for joining us on this Saturday. It's a little bit after 5 o'clock. It's hard to believe we've been with you for about 50 minutes already. About 10 minutes away from 1 hour. And so I'm going to turn the music up just a little bit while I type and put up this poll for you, okay? So I'll be back in a few moments. Okay, so the cool thing about Poll Everywhere is that you can actually post it live, and you can participate live with your audience. So I think that's really, really cool. Now, we want to do more of this in the future, so I'll just tell you what it is, what you're going to find. I'm going to also cut and paste it into Twitter, so you'll see the link there, and then we'll cut and paste it into our Facebook page on our CMajor Before the Show page. The question is this: do you believe that there is such a thing as jazz education? So I gave you an A, B, C, D, E answer. There's no one right answer. I think I just checked the check mark to say everyone is correct, but yes, I do. So if you stand by that, then that's what you stand by. Then the second answer is no, I don't. If you click that one. The third one would be I'm not sure. And the next one would be jazz education and music education are the same thing. And then the last one is the term jazz education is an oxymoron. So if you're not sure what oxymoron means, let's just go to the computer for that. It'll say CMajor. I forgot what oxymoron means. Okay, so let's see if we can find it on, I don't know if I should do a Google search. Let's see if I can do a Chrome search. I wonder if I could just tweet this. It'd be easier just to tweet it. And this is not in any way meant to be controversial, so please don't take it that way. It's just really showing respect to the thoughts of Mr. Ellis Marsalis. May he rest in peace. And I really love that he was the thinker. He really would just state what was on his mind and what he believed and stood by those principles and practices of his music making and his teaching. So it really is just to pay attention to some of the thoughts of our greatest thinkers out there. So I posted it as a tweet. Now let's see if I can post it on Facebook. And we could post it on our CMajor for the show page. Say we are talking about this day's episode. Hashtag have fun. Okay. So let's just post it. Now in a minute I'm going to go over to my Facebook page as well, because I know we said we were going to mention some things on today's episode as well. So I want to get to that. Now let me go ahead and log out. And then I'll follow up on this just to see where you are in your response. Usually people haven't responded directly to these things, but I feel like there are some people watching this, so we like to make sure we're on our P's and Q's. Now, we've been talking about playing by ear versus playing by sight versus playing by movement. We went over some basic chord movements, and we talked about how great it is for learning to play songs, like a variety of songs. So you hear a lot of claims on the internet, oh, you can learn to play 500 songs instantly. Well, what they're not telling you is that a lot of those songs have the same progressions. That's what they're saying. And then you're not stuck with just one progression. So that's also the beauty of learning to play by ear, is that you can change the progression to fit your personality, your preferred sound, and so forth. Now, what gets tricky is transposition. So, would you learn to play the same song in all 12 keys? And there was a funny story that one of our professors told us about this. I have to hit the laugh track for that. I haven't even said what was funny yet, but he said that he auditioned once for, I think it was for either a radio station or a radio show, and they wanted to know if he could play this one particular jazz song in all 12 keys. And of course, he knew he hadn't practiced in all 12 keys, but he also knew that the station director, who was not looking at his hands, didn't know music well enough to know one key from the next. And so he got hired because he just kept playing the same progression over and over again in the same key. Maybe he altered the inversions or something to make it sound slightly different. But the guy was like, oh, play it in the key of D flat. He played it in the same key. Oh, play it again, this time in the key of A flat. Okay, play it again, this time in the key of F major. And he just kept playing the same thing over and over. I'm sure I'm not telling the joke the way it was meant to be told, but anyway, just add some laughter to that. So the question is, would you learn to transpose if you know a progression that works for certain songs or multiple songs? The short answer on that is that you have keyboards that can do that now. So again, we've mentioned that before on this podcast. Does using technology mean that you're cheating? No, I think using technology means that you're using technology. So if you're on a gig and you don't really know all of your keys that well, maybe you only know one key. What are you going to do? You're going to find that button on your keyboard that will transpose it for you, and then just keep playing. So I know professional musicians that do that to this day. I'm not going to call them out on it, but some people get mad about that. They just think, oh, why didn't he just learn to play it in other keys? I'm mad that he doesn't transpose. Well, he doesn't have to. He has a keyboard that does it for him. But you think about it for yourself. That's part of your music education if you're going to learn to transpose, or you're not going to learn to transpose, or you don't like transposing. There's something about it that you don't like. I would say get to the bottom of it. Do your own self-discovery of why you don't like to transpose. And then practice transposing. Maybe you can grow out of that. Okay, for our coffee culture mention today, we're going to mention the flavor of Sumatra. Last week we mentioned a coffee that is being used to raise donations for charity. This week we're mentioning our favorite coffee, which is on my mind, which is Sumatra. So if you haven't tried Sumatra, I highly recommend Sumatra. It's a dark coffee. And dark doesn't necessarily mean stronger. It means the texture is thicker. So let's go to our social media really quickly, and then I'm going to talk about what's coming up on the CMajor radio show and what's coming up next week right here on CMajor Before the Show. So you're going to hear me typing. Hope you're still doing okay. And so we see Jazz at Lincoln Center has put up a post. We're not going to go to that right now. Let's just go to CMajor Before the Show. Now, I had some very exciting things that I posted. Well, they were exciting to me. Hopefully they'll be exciting to you, but they were very exciting for me to post. And today's post, chord movement, distancing piano sounds, talking about that. Protect our heroes. We did a shout out this week because it came across my desk. You should do a shout out to the people we're calling our heroes at 1 o'clock every day, just to say thank you. Thank you for being out there, being on the front lines and keeping us safe. Now, I wanted you to check this out. There's a video by DeVell Crawford. So if you've never heard of him, he's a pianist that's out of New Orleans. And I was very surprised to see this. It was on the Steinway website. And he did a very beautiful arrangement of He Looked Beyond My Fault. So check that out. It's also based on the Londonderry Air tune. Now, I was excited about this. Nothing funny. So I said we'll mention this on Saturday's podcast, and we're mentioning it now. Part of that masterclass that I attended was to hear a performance of music that I had never heard before by this particular composer. And so now that I've had a chance to look at the score, I thought, let me see if I could sight read that just for fun. So nothing funny about it at all, but I think it still may be fun to try to sight read that. Maybe not for you so much, but for me. And then watch this. I posted the virtual masterclass so you can see the connection. They posted it for the public. Steinway, as you know, they opened up their vault for you to see some of their videos from their Steinway video archives, and I think it's worth checking it out. You don't know how long it's going to be open to the public. They may decide to close it after COVID-19 has died down even more as we try to get back to normal, but check it out if you can. And then I posted some other things there. Also, I'm doing this new thing now. It came to my attention since COVID-19 that there are videos, the videos that circulate on Facebook, and they show you these awesome things that are happening with animals, everything from dogs to birds to pigs to, in this case, elephants. So I happened to run across this video where this guy was playing piano for elephants. At least that's what it appeared to be. And I was so fascinated with that. I just thought what it would be like to play for elephants. So we're doing this thing now where I'm raising money for elephants for Africa. So if you care to be the first to donate, you can do that. Go to our CMajor Before the Show homepage, and I posted it underneath our welcome video. We just did a welcome video for prospective students. So I was asked to formally introduce myself in case you're thinking about taking piano lessons, so you can hear my philosophy, hear where I've come from myself as a student and now a teacher, and then underneath that, you can donate to the elephants. Now, I love elephants. I have not played music for an elephant up close yet, but I think one day I might, and I would love to pass that on to my students. And it seems that you really need to play real music for the elephants to respond emotionally. So whether they are traumatized or mistreated or whatever the case may be, you want them to respond to real playing and not just get there and maybe play like, a simple chord progression. You really want to play something that's either classical or something else. But we're going to do a live show. We're going to try it out tomorrow. We're going to try Stage It. We've been hearing some really good things about Stage It. Now, you don't probably know this, but I've been on Stage It for a long time. I just never put anything up. So I would say probably since around 2008. For about 12 years, I just had my profile there and just never did anything with it. I was still trying to get together an idea, wasn't sure what I would post if I did play something live, and wasn't really quite sure how it works. So there are articles that are circulating now that talk about how successful it has been, and I think that's exactly right, that now that we are forced to be inside, you are stuck at home, where else are you going to be? On your computer. Thank goodness you can be on some type of mobile device. So I really appreciate that technology has evolved to that point where you have something to do at home and not just stare at the television. You can also use your mobile device. You can connect with other people through technology. And now if you're a musician, you have an option to perform live. So check it out. It's at stageit.com. We have posted our Music for Elephants concert series. I'm only going to be there for 10 minutes tomorrow, and I'm just following in the footsteps of the performers who thought it was wise to perform on a Sunday afternoon. Everybody's together, and they'll probably listen around that time. But we're going to give it a try on tomorrow, which is Sunday, Easter Sunday, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then if it goes well, then we'll do it again sometime in May, perhaps. Now, there's some other things that I posted. There's a really wonderful video. You guys have got to check this out, because this is the other thing that's becoming trendy to do, and that is either perform with yourself. So you're playing the accompaniment, and then you're also playing the solo. So this French horn player from the New York Philharmonic was playing one of my favorite concertos of all time, the Ravel's Piano Concerto in G major. I just love that concerto. It's so graceful and beautiful. And there is an English horn solo, and it's so lovely the way he's able to play the piano part, accompany himself in the other part of the video playing the English horn, the solo part. It's just wonderful to see that. So I put wow. And then virtual masterclass, I was just talking about that. That's the class that I went to over at the Steinway site. So thank you so much to our lead teaching artist professional who is keeping us abreast of things like that and really drawing our attention to right places to go on the internet. So I really, really thank you so much for that. You know who you are. And then I also had a recommendation. This one professor has really changed my mind, my thinking about my teaching as a teaching artist. And she talks a lot about excavation and doing archaeological digging and within yourself, just to really discover the root of your feelings and your responses to students and your reactions and how you're going to reply and things like that. So she really makes you think about your intention. And she has a new book out called Love from the Vortex. I did a short review of it and I love it. I hope you check it out. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Goodreads. And then here we are with the assignment. So did you do your homework? We haven't played that in a while. It's not homework anymore. It's called a fun music exercise. So last week we talked a lot about writing your own notation and then just coming up with something really creative. So hopefully you have fun with that. Now, as we get ready to end today's program, what I want to say is next week, get ready. We are going to go back to piano beginner basics. I said I was going to clean up the podcast. I'm keeping my promise. I'm doing that. I'm starting to get back to more scripted talk. And I want to slow things way down just for you, because thinking about my growth as a teaching artist made me also realize, especially during this time where we have a lot of thinking time to ourselves. If you don't know it by now, I'm an introvert that likes to do extroverted things. I have to laugh about that, but it's true. And so I'm thinking that I want to stick to my principles for teaching you how to play piano, quote unquote, the right way. And that starts with really getting back to some piano beginner basics. So as I begin to write my book, and my book is going to be based on method and not on instruction, but method, I really want to think about how I'm treating you as a student. Meaning, do I really get you to think critically about what you're doing? Everything from the very beginning. So be prepared for that. It's going to slow things down a minute, but I really hope to get you to think from moment to moment what you're doing, what you're setting yourself up for when you sign up for piano lessons. Today's topic was about putting some distancing between your melody and your harmony. We're going to continue today's topic over at the CMajor radio show, where we write things down. So bring pen and paper. If you need free manuscript paper, there are places to get that online. Ask us. We know where those places are. And we want to show you how to write these sounds on manuscript paper. Some of the sounds that we discussed today. Maybe not all of them, but we'll show you some of those, and that's coming up on the CMajor radio show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. I need to get some water really quickly. And when I come back, we're going to end today's show. I'm going to tell you where you can find us online. You've been listening to the CMajor Before the Show podcast. Okay, we're back. We're ending today's show, and I want to leave it on an upbeat to ask you to check us out online. You can find us on this really wonderful site that came across our desk. It's called Meat Hook. Now, I know it sounds unusual. It's not about meat, the meat that you eat. It's about meeting someone, okay? And it's not like you're hooking something like a fish on a fishing hook. But it really is about meeting online, finding someone that you can really trust to give you the information you're looking for, and then you're able to hook onto that platform to actually spend some time with that person. You can decide what that is. Do you want to spend 10 minutes? Do you want to spend 20 minutes? Do you want to spend 30 minutes? Do you want to spend 45 minutes or 60 minutes or longer? You pay for the time that you want to spend, and you make that arrangement. Now, as a new instructor on Meat Hook, you'll see my schedule posted from week to week. So far, the last couple of weeks, I've posted from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. because that's when I thought I could be available. This coming week, just to caution you, I may be posting some evening times because I'm thinking I want to try it on the other end first. Maybe it's easier for some of you to meet during the evening online, but it's just for really a 30-minute lesson if you care to have a lesson with me. And then if you need to discuss something further about music, maybe you need some advice or you need to consult with somebody before you make a decision, or you've already made a decision, you want someone to agree with you and you just want to talk it out. So that's what that website is for. So you can find us on Meat Hook. Find us on SoundCloud. Again, if you want to make a donation to us. Find us on WordPress. That's where you can find us for CMajorPorter.com, our CMajor's Classroom website. Find us on Music Glue, which is also our official website and blog. Find us on Facebook, CMajor Before the Show. Find us on Twitter. Now you can find us on Tumblr. We haven't developed our profile just yet, but find us over there. Find us on Instagram. We are there, and you may have to request me to follow you because I believe I made my page private. And you can see us over there for different posts that we post. I posted a movie of myself playing a song that I wanted to show my students. It's a little bit of a piano march. So check that out. Also check us out on YouTube. Every time we post something on Spreaker, it shows up over there, and you can download the videos over there or share the links at least and spread the word about what we're trying to do with music making online. Discord, I just discovered that this week. Now, I'm developing my profile over there, but I hear that some students want to connect via Discord. Google Hangouts as well for piano lessons. We're over there as well. But also, let me caution you, you do want to be a little more protective when you're online. You've been hearing some of these things that keep happening to others. You don't want that to happen to you. So Tone Row and Zoom are taking really strict precautions nowadays. So just know you're safe if you want to meet us over there for piano lessons. We're also available on Skype. So far, knock wood, I haven't had any problems on Skype. Only thing with Skype is that sometimes you're limited, and you may find less limitations on Zoom. And then Tone Row is just strictly all the way professional, built for piano lessons. So just know that if you want to find us over there for piano, feel free to look us up. You can look me up by my name, Carol Porter. LinkedIn, you can also find me there as well. And then, of course, you can find us here on the Spreaker platform. Apple Music, iTunes, get our music over there. Get my music over there. TuneCore, Stage It. I'll see you live tomorrow for a live show, 10 minutes. And then if you want to find music from Deezer, yeah, you can find me over there. I put Deeper, I meant Deezer. You know, this autocorrect is something else. I have to laugh about that. I said, what's deeper? Oh, it's Deezer. Okay, Spotify. Musica, music lessons. I've had a long history with them. Also, I'm a music and arts teacher. I'm transitioning right now because we're trying to do more online work, and then we're just waiting to open back up. So stay tuned for some big announcements there, but I'm very hopeful. Thank you so much, Music and Arts. I really appreciate everything you've done. Thank you to Musical Lessons as well. You can also find me on Do Re Mi World. Now, I was really surprised that some of my students have been finding my profile over there, and they were able to reach out to me directly. So just be careful. I don't know if it's as secure as some of these other platforms, but it's been really useful for those who want to get in touch with me about piano lessons. And then I think you pronounce it Vimeo. I don't think I've ever said that on this podcast before. Vimeo. Vimeo. I have maybe a couple of videos posted there, but not much. I think if anything, I posted something that was supposed to be fun, like tongue-in-cheek. I think it was like making fun of the idea of being afraid of math. So I hope it didn't offend anyone. I could take it down if it did, but some musicians are still afraid of math. But I find that there's a lot to appreciate in music when it comes to math, and vice versa. The last thing I'm going to say to you before we go to the CMajor radio show is that we want an app for this podcast, but you have to help us. Listen, like, follow. Now's the time to do it. I find that being online is really a big blessing for us. We want to partner with you, and we welcome anyone who is thinking about joining us online for piano lessons. I've listed all these places where to find us. Please find us, and please let it be in good spirits and good intentions, and we'll do the same. I promise you. We just want to keep it with the right spirit, with the right energy. And so I am posting things online as we speak. I now have a welcome announcement for anyone thinking about taking piano lessons online. And we want to stay remote, working remote online for as long as possible, as long as it makes sense. I think after all of this is over with COVID-19, not too many people are going to feel comfortable with you coming into their house. They don't know what you're tracking in there. Not too many people are going to feel that comfortable with you coming to them for piano lessons, and you going to them and them coming to you. You're going to feel a little bit strange about it as well. We all want to be protected, but I think there's something to be said for finding a way to work out learning online. If you love to learn, then you'll find a way to learn. And I don't think there's anything wrong with learning online. Again, find us tomorrow. We have an announcement posted. Hope to see you tomorrow live on Stage It for our Music for Elephants concert series. It's a fun concert series. And then next week, here on CMajor Before the Show, we are making a U-turn going back to basics. So I'll see you then right here on CMajor Before the Show. Don't forget to see us over at the CMajor radio show coming up next. Take care. Have a wonderful Easter weekend, the best that you can make it. And we'll see you next time. Take care.